Alrighty. Hello, everyone. I wanted to see if today we could focus a little bit on relationships. So that's going to be our biggest topic of the day. And my hope is that I give you some wording around some things when we're connecting. Um, you'll hear me say a lot of like addressing couples, but my thoughts are probably going to be very relevant to any type of relationship. You'd have to do your variation a little bit. But just my language is just for the sake of time is just going to be focused on couples. Okay. So let's just go ahead and get started. So most couples believe that when you're talking about problems, the way to fix them is just to really sit and talk about it, right? And it feels logical. It feels the responsible thing to do. It feels like the adult thing to do. So you sit down, you have conversations, you explain what is bothering you, you share your perspective, you analyze the situation, you offer solutions. And with some of us, nothing seems to truly change. You might walk away from the conversation feeling temporarily understood, but within days, the same fight reappears again. You might agree on a plan, but the same emotional disconnection keeps showing up over and over again. And you might even feel like you are communicating well, but the relationship still feels stuck in some ways. And eventually, you start to wonder if talking is doing anything at all. We start feeling exhausted. Like, I've done this. I've done this so many times over. Now, the truth is that most couples never really learn how to talk about problems in a way that actually transforms them personally. Okay, so I'm not trying to transform the other person, I'm really working on myself. They stay trapped in endless conversations, and that kind of circles around in a loop. And it also circles around certain issues that are repeating themselves without ever really touching the heart of them, the heart of the issues, I mean. They talk about logistics, details, solutions, but they rarely make contact with the deeper emotional reality underneath those problems. And without that emotional contact, words are just words, and they kind of just stay very cognitive, very on the surface, and they don't really get to the heart of the problem. And this is why you can have the same conversation 1,000 times and nothing really changes, because the words are not the problem. The lack of emotional connection most of the time is the problem. And when we have that emotional connection, words follow suit. The lack of feeling safe is our biggest problem. Okay. And so all the explanations and solutions in the world will keep skimming across the surface without ever really reaching the core. And think about the last time that you argued with your partner. You probably explained what they did that hurt you. You probably told them why you felt disrespected. You probably gave examples, evidence, reasons, brought things from all over the place, other examples, maybe even from the past, kind of snuck their way in. But underneath all of that, what you really trying to say was something far simpler and far more vulnerable. Something like, I felt invisible, or I felt like I didn't matter, or I was scared you would stop choosing me. Those are the real truths hiding beneath the problem. And those are the truths that rarely get spoken. And mind you, a lot of the times, as the one who is hurt and brings the thing up, I may not even realize that that's what's going on with me. So this really takes a lot of introspection so that I understand where I'm at, so that I'm even considering the vulnerability to even go to that depth. Talking fails when it becomes a debate. It fails when the goal is to convince instead of connect. I'm trying to convince them. I'm trying to justify myself. I'm trying to prove a point. It fails when you stay in your intellect instead of stepping into your heart. Most people don't even realize that they're doing it. They stay in the logic, they stay cognitive because it feels safer than revealing the raw feelings underneath all of it. They focus on who is right because that feels less risky than saying, I feel small and unloved right now. They analyze because analysis feels easier than vulnerability. But relationships do not heal through logic. They heal through emotional contact and a connection, by being seen, by being felt, by feeling validated and understood. One of the biggest reasons conversations fail is because of how they start. Most people begin from a place of blame, accusation, frustration, criticism, and that instantly triggers defense in the other person. It closes the door to connect before the conversation even starts. And these are some of the maybe most common openers that don't work. And they come from a place of anger or frustration, right? When you say things like, you always, that word always, globalizing. The problem with you is fill in the blank. If you would just listen, or I've told you 1,000 times, or you make me feel like, you make me feel, that's also blaming, right? This is why I don't open up to you. I am only saying this because you need to hear it. I don't understand how you can't see this and this and this, right? Um, it's not that complicated. You just need to, again, fill in the blanks. If you cared, if you loved me, you would fill in the blanks. You're the one who started this. Like straight out blame, right? I wouldn't have done this if you hadn't, so on and so forth. The least you could do is, you never seem to think about, I can't believe you still do this, that, or the other thing, or believe this, that, or the other thing. Why is it so hard for you to, again, fill in the blanks? Do you ever realize how ridiculous that is? You see how like minimizing of the other person that can be, even if you don't mean to, the other person receives it that way, as criticism, as lesser than, or things like, it's always the same thing with you, or you clearly don't get it. You're so selfish. If you weren't so selfish, so on and so forth. This is exactly why we keep having the same fight. Or this is like a really big one. You're just overreacting. It's really minimizing the emotions that the other person is experiencing. Or I guess I'm the only one who cares about this. Or, well, if you did your part, right? Very conditional, in that kind of conversation goes in that direction. Or I shouldn't even have to bring this up. This is common sense, right? Now, every one of these examples is built to fail. Every single one of them. They make the other person feel attacked instead of invited. And the goal is inviting so that we can connect. They shift the focus from your internal experience to their perceived flaws. And they create an emotional battlefield where connection is just impossible, right? The truth is, real healing conversations begin in a completely different way. They begin with vulnerability instead of blame. They begin with curiosity instead of certainty. They begin with your deeper emotional truth rather than your rehearsed argument. And I want to give you a whole bunch of examples. There's 25 of them. I'm just going to read them to you, of how a conversation can start in a way that opens that heart instead of shutting it down. And maybe even if you have a paper and a pen, or you want to write this down on your phone or on your computer, these might come in really handy. And rehearsing them, ahead of time. So something like, when that happens, I feel like I didn't matter. That's just you really keeping the focus on you. And you're not blaming. I know I might not say this perfectly, but I want you to understand what's happening inside of me. Here's another one. I miss how close we used to feel, and I want to find our way back there. I felt really small in that moment, and I'm trying to understand why. This has no blame at all, right? It's all really speaking from the heart about my experience. Here's another one. I'm scared that I'm not important to you right now. Even though you could say, you did this, you did that, you treated me this way, but notice how that sentence is just really self-focused, and you're really sharing your experience of this. Let's see, what else? Right. I want to share something that's vulnerable for me, and I hope that you can just listen. Right? It's an invitation, and it's a hope that I am telling my partner, or the person that I'm speaking to, and I'm really, really open with that, and I'm really showing my vulnerability. Here's another one. When we argue, I sometimes feel like we are on opposite sides instead of the same team. And that's just a feeling I'm sharing with my partner. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, but it feels that way, so I'm sharing that, right? Another one, I feel lonely, even when we're together, and I want to feel connected again. Again, I'm not saying you leave me alone and you're on your phone all the time. You're really speaking to your experience, your internal experience. I feel lonely even when we're together, and I want to feel connected again. I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but something about this interaction really did. It's what a gentle way to say something that is so deep in my heart. I want us to be closer, and I think this conversation might help us get there. Or I feel afraid to bring this up because I don't want to fight, but I also don't want to keep holding it in. What I love about this sentence is that it really speaks to my different parts. It's a part of me that's really afraid to bring this up because I don't want to fight, but also there's a part of me that doesn't want to keep holding it in. I want to connect. I want to take that risk. That part of me wants to take the risk because I care about our connection. I care about being connected to you. Something inside me shuts down when we talk like this, and I want to understand it with you, right? What a hard sentence to say, but it can be so effective. I don't want to blame you. I just want to show you the part of me that feels hurt. You're just setting intention. I care so much about us that I want to work through this even though it's hard. Or I want you to know what I'm feeling, not so you fix it, but so you can understand me. Right? So often, sometimes we don't feel connected to the other person because as soon as we start sharing some of these vulnerable pieces of us, they start working on fixing, and they come from a good place most of the time. But I'm not ready for that. I just want to be understood. So I'm sharing that and I'm being vulnerable about that. Here's another one. I feel a deep need to be seen by you right now. Or it's difficult for me to say this, but I need to be honest about how I felt. Here's another one. What I really need is reassurance that we're in this together. These sentences can't come from a haphazard, approach to having a conversation. They're well thought, and if you do sit with yourself and with your experience before you speak to your partner, a lot of that can really come to the surface for you, and you would have a deeper understanding of what's going on for you. Here's another one. I feel myself pulling away, and I don't want to. I love this sentence so much because it really, it's short and it's straight to the point, and it's also an admission from me that I am shutting down. So as a person says that out loud, you hear yourself saying that. And you also hear how there is a part of you that says, I don't want that. I want to have that conversation and I want it to be productive. What a vulnerable thing to say, but it can be really, really effective. It hurts me when we stop talking because I still care so deeply. Here's another one. I want to understand your side too, but I also want you to hear what's true for me. Okay? And I also want you to hear the truth. No, I also want you to hear what's true for me, because that indicates that I understand we have different perceptions and I am in acceptance of that. And I want you to hear my perspective on this, even if you don't agree, but I want to be heard, right? I'm not trying to criticize, I'm trying to connect. Or here's another one. I love you, and that's why this matters so much to me. And here's the last one. There's a part of me, or one before last, there's a part of me that's been feeling unseen, and I want to share it with you. Our last one. I believe we can work through this, but I need to feel safe enough to talk about it honestly. And just notice these sentences work great for partners, and they need a lot of exercise and working through them and sitting with them for a long time. It's really hard for these sentences to just pop in our brains. So a lot of the times it's about sitting with this, reflecting and recognizing, oh, in that incident that happened with, my partner, it would have been really helpful for me to say this sentence. So this one I can keep in mind, I can memorize it and keep it in the back of my mind, so that next time we have a conversation, or if I'm preparing for a conversation, these are some of the things that I can also keep in mind so that I can say. Also notice that this could work between you and your child, or you and your parent, or you and a friend, right? This is more about relationships in general too. And now notice how different these sentences feel from the previous ones. They do not attack, they do not accuse, they do not defend, they reveal. They show your inner world. They pull your partner or the person that you're speaking to closer instead of pushing them away. And most importantly, they invite connection rather than conflict. When a conversation begins like this, things do change. The person across from you is far less likely to feel blamed and far more likely to feel invited into your experience. Instead of defending themselves, they lean in. Instead of preparing like a counter argument, they have more tendency to listen. Instead of trying to prove you wrong, they really try to understand, because it's a lot more gentle to approach the conversation that way and start off that way. The conversations that change relationships are not the ones filled with solutions. They are the ones where both people allow themselves to be seen. And sometimes you're going to come to a conversation and you're the only one that is prepared to show, and the other person isn't. And I know that's a lot harder, but these are good places to start. If you want change in a relationship, waiting for the other person to become vulnerable or decide to become vulnerable means that you could wait forever. So it may mean that you have to do the starting, right? You are the one that needs to start revealing and become vulnerable, right? Those relationships or those conversations, they are the ones where you stop trying to win and start trying to understand. They are the ones where you speak from your deeper experience, not just your opinion. They are the ones where you stop pointing at behaviors and start sharing the fears, the longings, the wounds underneath those behaviors. Imagine how different a fight would feel if, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you say, "When I feel unheard, it reminds me of every moment in my life when I felt like my voice did not matter." Imagine how different it would feel if, instead of saying, "You're always on your phone," you say, "I miss you and I feel lonely even when we are together." Imagine if, instead of defending yourself, you said, "It hurts to know that something I did made you feel that way." Those are the conversations that build closeness instead of distance. This kind of dialogue is uncomfortable, it is vulnerable, it is risky, but it is also where healing begins, because it invites your partner into your inner world instead of keeping them locked out. It allows them to feel your truth instead of just hearing your words, and it creates a space where understanding can replace blame. If talking about problems has not been working, it is not because you are broken. It is because the method may be incomplete. That is one of the reasons, and that's why I'm addressing this today. Problems in relationships are not solved by trading information back and forth. They are transformed when two people make contact with each other's humanity. They are healed when both people feel safe enough to tell the deeper truth and soft enough to hear it. Okay, so the next time you find yourself in yet another conversation that feels like it is going nowhere, pause before you say another word. Ask yourself what you are really trying to say underneath the surface. Ask yourself what emotion is sitting behind your complaint. Ask yourself what deeper truth you have been afraid to share, and then speak from there. And if you can't do that in the moment, I would invite you to take a break and sit with your emotional content first and recognize that before you have another conversation, right, about the topic, because that could go way better. Because relationships don't grow when we become better debaters, they grow when we become braver revealers. They grow when we risk saying the harder things. They grow when we stop using words to protect ourselves and start using them to connect. And when both people do that, talking stops being a way to explain the problem and it becomes a way to finally begin to heal. The goal is not to just talk. The goal is to feel each other. The goal is not just to understand the problem. The goal is to understand the heart that is living beneath it. And when you reach that level of contact, everything changes. What once felt impossible to resolve begins to soften. What once felt stuck starts to move. And what once felt broken becomes a bridge back to closeness. That is why most conversations fail. But also, that is why they can succeed. Because when the words are connected to what is most real inside of you, they are no longer just sounds in the air. They are the language of the heart. And that is probably the only language that really truly heals love and connection between you and a significant other or someone else that you are in a relationship with. So reflect on some of that and spend some time with it and see where that takes you, okay? Have a great one.